get in front of these things, we can't say a word. My pleasure to, sit down. It's my pleasure to interview Len Wingett, longtime Lakefield resident, born and raised in the village. He was charter president, or charter member of our Lakefield Historical Society. He's been a president of our Historical Society. He served on the book committee. He was at our book launching. He's volunteered in every task that has been asked. Right now he's serving on 2 committees and is vice president and chairman of one other committee. Len, you're a pretty versatile person.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Where were you born?
Lakefield.
In Lakefield?
Yeah.
Born in a home? You were like right in Lakefield? Or in a hospital?
I'm positive of that. I think I was born at home, actually.
Uh-huh. And where was that? On Concession Street?
Yes, probably was.
Uh-huh. And what are your parents' names?
Cecil and Ruby.
Wingett. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And your mother's name, I believe, was Ruby Rumbelow.
Righto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Remember that because we could never pronounce it. And your brothers and sisters?
Kenneth and Raymond.
Okay. And you're the elder statesman of the family,
I'm
you
the
know?
bunch. I'm older of the crew. Older of the crew.
I remember one time we were on a trip, and this fellow who didn't seem nearly as bright as us, but the boss was kind of cowing up to him, and he said, "Walter," he said, "are you the oldest in your family?" "No," he said, "my mother and father are both older than me." Anyhow, but you are the oldest child in your family. Thank you very much. Do you remember was there a doctor attended at your birth?
No idea.
No.
No.
You haven't got a very good
My
memory.
memory's awful short.
Excuse me for being silly, but that's the way Len and I are. More so me. Your grandparents on the Wingett side.
Jenny Wingett.
Uh-huh. And her maiden name was Kidd, I believe.
Yep. Jenny Kidd.
Good stock. She
Oh,
came from
yeah.
Dummer?
Dummer.
Ah,
Lions Line
yeah.
of Dummer.
I knew your grandmother, and I just loved her, and she wasn't even my grandmother. She was
That's right.
partial to you, boy. She was partial to her own family, but she was a wonderful lady. And your father, did he live in Lakefield all his life, most of his life? Uh-huh. Do you remember when the Wingetts came to Lakefield, or do you have any idea?
No.
No. What ancestry were they?
Ancestry.
Yeah, what, I mean, they spoke English reasonably well.
They come from England.
England,
Okay.
okay. Well, that's probably the reason. Yeah,
But
okay.
my name isn't Wingett.
No?
Mason. You got me wrong.
Your name isn't Wingett? Oh, I see.
My grandfather changed his name when he come from England, from Mason to Wingett, and that's why the Masons are connected there. So,
Oh, I see.
okay, that's a little tidbit there for you.
Yeah, well, we're not going to delve too deeply
Okay.
into that. You went to school in Lakefield, Len?
Yep.
Who was your first teacher?
Miss Kidd,
Miss Elsie Kidd?
Yep.
What did you think of her?
good girl. I don't remember much about her, but she was a good woman.
Yes, uh-huh. Who was the principal then, do you remember?
No, I can't remember that.
No.
time.
Uh-huh. Okay. Len, you graduated from school. What did you do then? Did you have any part-time jobs when you were going to school?
Yep.
None?
Yep.
Where?
Deliver meat.
Who'd you deliver meat for?
For Teddy Crawford and Harold Hamlin.
Teddy Crawford and Harold Hamlin.
And then Ralph Beavis.
And Ralph Beavis, yeah. So when you went to work, is that the first place you went to work after you got out of school?
Yep.
And who owned the butcher shop then?
Harold Hamlin.
And where was it located?
On the corner of Burnham and Queen.
Would that be the...
Clinic.
Yeah, southwest corner?
Yep.
Uh-huh. And what were your duties there when you first went there?
Everything.
Everything, eh? Scrub the chopping block?
Scrub and clean and, sweep the sidewalk and deliver the meat.
Did you make sausage?
No, not Hamlin didn't, but Harold Beavis did. They did that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And You delivered how? With
Bicycle.
bicycle? And did you have like a regular route, or just as the orders came in?
Village, small village pretty well.
Did they buy their meat or kill their own meat, or do you remember?
The Harold in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they bought it from Canada Packers mostly, and then Ralph Beavis and Howard used to kill meat for them and sell it to them. And they bought
Kill
meat
some of
off-
their own stock?
Yeah, meat off of the gills, all of them.
Well, Ralph Beavis's wife was descendant of the Gills, was she
That's
not?
right, yeah.
Her mother was a Gill, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I understand that you're going to give us a talk on butchery.
Well, I should, yeah, a little bit of a chat.
All right, that would be very nice. First, before we get into that, let me see your fingers. You got them all? There's a fella that's an authority on butchery. He's been butchering how many years, Len? A number of years, and he's got all his fingers anyway. Yeah.
Probably 50 years anyway.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Len. I'll just let you carry on. If you have to get up and walk around, that's fine. But
I got my stuff I'm going to show them here, and just so you put the camera over there behind you.
okay, so Lenny is going to give a speech to us now, and we'll try to get what we can on camera. Thanks very much, Len.
Meet off Crawford's all the time. And anyways, one of the neighbors' boys, Pat Spencer, he used to come in, and my mother would say, "What kind of meat you got today, Pat?" He says, beef, veal, pork, and lamb. And that's all he'd ever tell you. So anyway, she would tell him what she wanted, and they would deliver them again. So I used to go downtown with my mother, and I always looked at behind the meat counter, and I always remember a little big white swinging door with a black knob, and I always wondered where it went. But anyways, it wasn't later on I did learn where it went. So I started to work for Teddy Crawford probably when I was 13 years old, and delivering meat then, and shortly after that Harold Hamlin bought it. And I used to go to school also, and I would go to across the Smith side of the bridge, and I'd pick up a meat order there and leave it at the store, and then I go on this side of the bridge and get the orders for this side of the bridge, and then deliver them on the way to school. I'd done that mostly every day. Worked after schools every day, and I always remember the first bicycle I ever bought, I paid $49 for it. And I bought that off a Mayor's hardware store, and I was making $3.75 a week, I think it was at that time. So, and that's how I got into that. Anyways, later on, Ralph Beavis bought the business, and I worked with Ralph for 11 years, and we had a lot of fun there for 11 years. And then I purchased the business off of Ralph Beavis, and I was there for 20-some years or thereabouts. Anyways, I just have a few little things of the momentums that are not used in the meat room anymore. And this here is a little patty machine. If you've ever had hamburgers at Harold Hammond's when he had the restaurant, this is how he used to make his hamburger patties, with this handmade hamburger patty. You see it's almost wore apart there from him making all the hamburgers. So that's how Harold made his hamburgers. And anyway, this is probably one of the... Does anybody know what this is? Any idea?
No tenderizer?
Actually, it's that tenderizer is probably, they call it a cube steak machine, actually, is what they call it. So you just put the meat on it and crank her up, and there you go. And I haven't got a piece of meat, but I was going to put a piece of paper through it. Okay. I didn't have a piece of meat to do it, I would have brought it through here. You put it through here. No. And there, your meat come out like that. So they call it a cube steak machine. Anyway, that's quite an antique. That's the only one I ever seen of it, which I'm going to keep. I'm going to keep for the Historical Society. Nobody else. Anyways, this here is a meat saw, which you don't see them use very much in the meat room anymore. And this one here happened to be, belonged to Teddy Crawford, which is, the saw is probably 40 years old. 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 maybe even 70 years old, maybe even older than that. Now, it's not an original blade, but it is, it's one of Crawford's saws. I have another one at home with Harold Hamlin's initials on it, but it's all tattered and torn. I didn't bring it. And I don't know, I think a lot of you people remember when you used to go into the store, you used to tie the string up here. Well, was always a challenge to make sure that didn't work right, and I haven't got it hooked up right tonight, so it's not doing as it should. So that's another thing you don't see anyplace anymore. You never use the string. Always remember how you used to have to tie the string and break it, you know, on the package. And I don't know what these are for, but they look like needles. Years ago, when you tied up ropes, you pull your string through with the ropes, and you tied them with the needle. You put the string on there and pushed it through, and you pull it back out, and then that's the way you tied them up. They don't do that anymore. Never use these things. And another few little other items here, a couple of things here that you always used to have these things to tie the ropes to hold the meat together until you got it tied. And this is what you used to use these for. And we have another little item here, which you also don't see anymore. This is where they used to hang the quarters on. We run on a track, and you used to hang the quarters on there, and this is the way your meat roll around in it. And you never see that. The meat all comes in boxes anymore, and you know, and that's the way it's done. And I have an array of probably cleavers. Like Chinese people like cleavers, but these aren't any Chinese cleavers. This one here was one of Teddy Crawford's, but my brother-in-law worked at GM, so he took that up and chromed it for me. It was always the same color as that there, and that's what that is. That's a big one. You used to cut your steaks and then chop it, or before the power saws come out, they used to chop the chops with that, to cut it between each rib. That's one that belonged to Crawford's too. This is one I bought quite a few years ago, and at the time I paid $75 for that, so I don't know what it'd be worth today. And we're coming close to the end of it here. And these are a couple of little things that put on when you're tying the ropes. You're supposed to use that for cutting the string, you know, but it cut more fingers than the string, so I wouldn't let anybody use it. Anyway, that's basically all I have to show you there. If you have any questions you want to ask me, you can ask me whatever you'd like to. Anybody, anything would like to know about meat cutting or anything like that? Yes,
I
George.
remember going to the butcher shop for my mom, and they always had this big wooden table.
Yeah.
And then a brush they rubbed it with.
Mm-hmm.
And with
When
that
you're
it
finished
would
at
go.
night and you're about half dead, that's the time you scrape the block. And it was, you take a big brush about this wide and about that long with big brush on it, you just to scrub it as hard, and it had to be white before you finish. It had to be white before you done that. So.
Did you do the butchering at the back of the shop there to start with, or did they do that at the farm, then bring the quarters in?
I think that the Crawfords brought it, the slaughterhouse, and they brought it in when Teddy Crawford owned it. I'm pretty sure, I'm not positive of that. So, but anyways, I always like to tell a little story about an old fellow that worked for me. It was Teddy Crimmett. I don't know if anybody remembered him or not, but anyways, he worked with me, and he was cutting a roast for a lady, and the lady says, what kind of roast is that, Jack? He says, that's a Windsor roast. He says, why do you call it a Windsor roast? He says, well, I cut it with a Windsor knife. So that was Teddy's answer. Anyway, he always tells about the story about the lady coming in and wanted this piece of meat, and he says, that'll just taste like chicken. The lady says, I don't like chicken. So anyway, that's basic my history in meat. I was been in at since I was 13 years old. I'm 69 years old now, so you can add that up and see what it is. Yes, Mary?
So then, how long ago did you start giving bologna to children?
I don't know, Mary, but it's probably,
The bologna man.
yeah, probably when I used to save the bologna ends for the kids more than the other slices, and then used to run all over. Neil may remembers about that, because Neil worked with us for a while.
I worked with Len at Beavis's Meat Market, and very interested in what he had to say, and I was the delivery boy when he was the butcher. In those days, Ralph used to bring the hinds out onto the chopping block
Yeah,
and
used to
break
break
them down from there.
Yeah.
But it never sometimes a side, but mostly a hind.
Hind,
Or
front quarters,
front quarters.
just a whole block,
Yeah.
you bring them out and break it down.
How much would a hind weigh? How much would a hind weigh?
Oh, I'd say maybe, I don't know, 100 pounds?
Oh, no, more than that, no.
Not that much?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
125 to
Yeah.
220, 250, depending on what kind of an animal you have. You know, they can go pretty heavy. I also, when I was in business at the store, when Prince Andrew was at the Grove School, he went on a canoe trip with Terry Guest out west. And Terry came in to me one day and he said, "We're going on this canoe trip and we want to take some bacon with us." And I said, "Well, I don't know, how long going to be too?" "Well, we're going to be 3 or 4 weeks putting it all together. And you wonder how we take bacon." I said, "The only way you know you guys take it in is a whole slab of bacon," which I was buying at the time off of Burns, which always come from the west too. Anyways, they packed the bacon in the front of their canoe, and they cooked on it. They packed enough for whoever was in the canoe, took it up there with them, and they, I think it was 3 weeks, and was still good because it was cold enough to keep, and they packed it in the bow of the canoe. And that's, and another thing probably is when the Queen was in Ottawa, and I was cutting at the time Mrs. Belcher's buffalo at the time, we sent all the buffalo tenderloin down there for everybody, the dignitaries in Ottawa, to feed the Queen the buffalo tenderloin. So. And Prince Andrew used to be into when I had Hamlin, get ice cream, and nobody ever knew it was him. They really kept him under surveillance, I guess, but he was there and nobody knew he was there. So. Anyways, I don't know if any other stories I can tell. There's some I shouldn't tell, but
Then you don't mention anything about your game, deer and different things so many that you've cut up and
Well,
killed for people.
I don't kill deer, but anyways,
No,
I cut a lot of them, yeah. That's usually a challenge, especially them up from moose.
Did you have to hang them for long, like?
No, not necessary.
No,
No,
not
no.
like beef, eh?
No.
Well, moose would be even heavier to work with, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, a moose is something that never ever sets up. It doesn't stay solid like a beef. It's always like a bag of sand. You pick it up here and it goes there, and you pick it up here and it goes there. You know, no matter what it is, it just never stays.
That's because they're vegetarian.
That's right. Yeah, like if you were to live on a moose meat for any length of time, you would die because there's not enough protein in it for you to survive. There've been people knowing that that's why the kids or children are sick. They live in them remote areas, and that's all they ate was moose, and that was no good for them.
Who had that business in the same store from late 40s, early 50s? Is that Harold Hammond? No.
Yeah, Teddy Crawford's.
No, was it?
I never heard of him.
Well, Crawford was. How long was Teddy there? Or Teddy Crawford there, Cora? Do you know?
Oh, I have no idea.
Was he there when you were a child?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. Because I think there used to be.
I wasn't buying.
No, I know that, but I don't know how long the
Yeah,
Crawfords were there.
But I think maybe till about 47, 48 or
Well, they were
49.
there till 40. I was 13 years old when I started delivering meat, and so that would be about 1940.
As long as I can remember.
1946, and I think in 47, and that Harold Hamlin bought it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it was, I think it was Harold Hammond who just mentioned the bologna. I used to stop in there all the time, get the ends of bologna.
Yeah, probably
Around
at
the
the time.
1949, 50.
Yeah, would be. Yeah.
Len, didn't Sam Trude have a butcher shop over in the other corner, where the Home Hardware is now, right on the corner? Didn't
That was
he?
Harold.
Harold did.
Harold Trude had one with the fish and chip stories. That was in later years.
No, but I
But
mean,
Sam had one previous to that, but I'm not sure where it was.
Well, I think it was the end of where Home Hardware is now, you know.
On the corner?
Yeah.
No,
Your Warren Payne had one.
yeah,
after,
that's
but
Pro
that's-
Hardware, not on, Pro Hardware's on the corner.
No,
Home
no,
Hardware's
I
Cook.
don't mean Pro
See,
Hardware, I mean, right at the corner, right opposite Mr. Crawford's store.
Okay.
Down in the corner where Home Hardware is, when you're going
Yeah,
down
yeah.
Vernon Street. Yeah, yeah. Anyways, that's all I have to say.
Well, Len, on behalf of the membership, thank you very much. Found it very, very interesting. Just as an aside, and I'm not, one of the things I found most difficult, I pedaled the bike. And it wasn't uncommon in your day or mine to have 80 pounds of meat in that parcel carrier. And it certainly did well for my legs. And I always had strong thighs and legs, and that was because of pedaling that all over Lakefield. One of the negative things was that was a difficult time. And a lot of people didn't have money. And the poor butcher, he wasn't any wealthier or better off than anyone else, but he would send me out to different places, and I still remember the names, but I shall not mention them. But it was, now Neil, when you take this, don't you leave it unless they pay it. And you tell them, and I felt very badly, but then again, I needed the job and wanted the job too, and I was just a schoolboy. But there would be a good number of people, and I'm speaking of the early 50s, who through one reason or another, and they used to run up bills, and I'd have to collect it. I'd have to say, Mrs. So-and-so, could we have a bit of money on your bill, and stuff like this. And there were some that say, you know, if they don't pay you, don't leave it. So I'm sure you had your share of that
Oh,
too.
yes.
And it was a sad thing. Now, I don't know what happens to those people. They don't run up the bills, but I guess they go to the food banks. Lenny, thank you very much. Appreciate the effort you took in bringing these things.